the other the other thing is that print is perhaps the most democratic of art forms. It is pervasive. It's all around us.
You ever see art where you look at it and you don't immediately grasp what you're looking at? So I have this piece of art here, and I look at it, and at first I thought when I saw this artist's work, I was like, oh, this has this sort of comic booky vibe. And then the more I looked into it, it had like little classical elements into it, like little pieces integrated, shapes reoriented, all kinds of stuff like that. Now, Arturo, when you look at this as an artist, what do you see?
I think a combination of different things, right? Like I think photography, I see engraving. I think like a mix of styles, I will say. You know, it would be really cool to be able to ask the artist what this piece is about.
Yeah, and today we get the very chance and very opportunity to do just that, because we have Scott in the studio with us today. So, Scott, tell us, what is this piece and how did you create it?
This particular piece is a collaborative woodcut print that was created with an artist, Nick Osatek, who is an American and a phenomenal tattoo artist as well. And we collaborated on this particular piece because we were also working in tandem with an organization called Big Ink, who is this artist who is a phenomenal woodcut artist. His name is Lyle Castonguay, and several years ago he started up a project where he traveled around the country with his big giant etching press that he was able to put in the back of his van, so it was modular in form, could build it, and he would roll on up. And he started inviting artists to participate. And I think Nick and I were probably, he's been doing this since, 2010, 12. But so he would invite artists to carve a very large wood block. And I came up with the idea of doing a collaborative piece with Nick. And so we got together, and both Nick and I are artists who work somewhat reflexively, right? And we're very much interested in surrealism. And to use the sort of surrealist aesthetic, we just started exchanging bits and pieces digitally from our photographic collection or whatever. And we had a brief conversation about, hey, what should we do for this, for the Big Ink project? But we wanted it to be fluid. We didn't want to say, oh, X, Y, Z, these things need to transpire. So we would just digitally send back and forth bits and pieces. And then gradually I took those bits and pieces and I would construct essentially a digital collage made from drawings, made from my photographic imagery, made from scans, made from bits and pieces of appropriated imagery as well. And so I would kind of digitally collage some things, send it back to Nick. Nick would respond by deconstructing it, putting it back together, send it back to me. We did this kind of tag team thing for a number of weeks until I started really refining the image. Nick was working full-time at a furniture factory in addition to his tattoo work at the time. He was working as a furniture designer, actually. But at one point, he's like, man, I don't have any more time to spend on this. You want to take over? I'm like, sure. So I put together this large format image that we intended to have laser engraved. So we did some handwork, making the drawings, doing sketches, kind of working out the overall composition. But then I created a digital piece that I then went to a very fine sort of open access makerspace in Greensboro, North Carolina, called The Forge. And we cut the woodblock there on one of their large format industrial laser cutters.
So that's like a far more complex technical process than you'd see if you just look at the image. Like I see some traditional Scott elements that if people know your work, they'll see that are there. But it seems like there's been there's a lot of different elements to the creative process here. And I'm curious how you refine that. Like, is it different with every artist? Is it different in every piece?
It really depends on the artist. I think Nick and I have a kind of a similar sort of conception and similar. I hate the word style. His style is very different, but we both sort of dug into our archive, and I think there's, I really enjoy the idea of going back to work that not necessarily I've created, but I have a massive archive of visual data that I've collected over the years of carrying the camera or whatever, right? So I just started going into my collection. Nick started digging into his collection, and a lot of that just sort of intuitively came together.
Was there like any main motif or main theme that you were touching, or it was just purely exploratory or purely...
Very exploratory, and we just sort of responded to the images that we would put together or we would glean and send to each other. But then gradually a lot of imagery disappeared, and then some sort of rose to the surface where conceptually as well as visually we could orchestrate this visual piece that began to take on a particular expressive design in a way, something that we both responded to. And that particular way of working is very important. I'm a very exploratory artist. It's all about experimentation for me. I very seldom start out with a singular idea and then seek to recreate that, because there are infinite number of questions, right?
Do you do it that way because you consider it's a better process, or do you do it that way just because it comes to you naturally to do it that way?
No, very, very much so. I'm very intuitive when it comes to my work, because that's, as far as I'm concerned, where art happens. If I think of something, I'm going to look at this cup. I'm going to make a beautiful drawing of this cup, right? And just the manifestation of that, something else has to happen. And I think that sort of way of working intuitively and randomly, some really beautiful things, I think, ultimately can be generated without overthinking the overarching sort of plan. Too much planning, I think, is disadvantageous.
I feel like when looking at your work, it's also got a transformative element to it. So sometimes you see the same sort of base image, but you reorient it, you reintegrate it, or you have a set of pieces and they translate different every time. Is that sort of part of that core as well?
Yeah, I think it depends upon the juxtaposition, which you're taking a fragment of, and whatever you happen to be putting it next to. It can be very much radically reinterpreted, depending on what you take when you take a bird, for instance, right? and you juxtapose that with a slot machine wheel, for instance, okay, or text, or any sort of image. And that was a real exciting part of working with this, because Nick was doing a lot of drawing, right? And I was using a lot of fragmentary photographs, running them through the computer, screening them in a particular way, so the aesthetic started to sort of morph, but yet there was enough of a juxtaposition between the two that it would keep the viewer on edge in a particular way.
Yeah.
You know, I love to, put things together that are unexpected. And then this particular piece, like a book, reading it left to right, it unfolds in a very different way. And each and every time you look at the piece, there's a tendency to discover something new. And that discovery, very much in line with the way in which it was made, is also open to interpretation.
Yeah, when you talk about that, I also think of how there's very modern elements, but you also tend to use like classical elements in your work.
Mm-hmm.
And where does that originate? Like when do you decide to, go for something more classical? And I suppose those are not your own works; they're like known works, more or less.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I think, I'm very much inspired by art history. I'm very much inspired by just the plethora of images that you can find in the media, that you can find in the back of a magazine, that I can uncover as I'm looking through my archive of photographs from many decades ago. Right. So but I was classically trained as an artist. My undergraduate experience, I was doing traditional drawing. I was painting. I was making sculpture, within the context of a very traditional program. So that leaves a mark. I think, in terms of my way of working, I have that baggage with me. But at the same time, as a contemporary artist, and looking at and understanding that I am an artist of my own time, of now the 21st century, right? I have to bring that time into the work. But mixing that up with the classical, I think it also speaks to, sort of my creative legacy in a way.
And is that a point of reconstructing or deconstructing for you?
I think it's very much both.
Okay.
I think the whole idea of reconstructing the past, the whole idea of contemporary art in a post-historical period that in which we now exist. This idea of looking back at the past, but then taking it and then looking at it in this new contemporary light, new meanings begin to be derived.
That's a little bit the transformation we were talking about.
Precisely.
Right?
Yeah. Precisely. Yeah.
Hey there. So in Mosart Maastricht, we put a lot of effort into writing, editing, and creating our videos. So would you like to know what you can do to support our work? Considering subscribing to our channel and activate the notifications to don't miss any update. And if you like our videos, don't forget to leave your like and comment below. Thank you very much and enjoy the podcast.
So, Scott, we were just talking about some traditional elements in your work, but printing, the printing press, it's quite an ancient technique now. What made you choose that form to express yourself?
Well, I think, as I mentioned previously, I have a great interest in the history of art, and I think If you go back to 1450, Johannes Gutenberg invents the movable type press, one of the most significant developments in human history, right? And that, by the way, it happened in the Low Countries. So there's a tremendous sort of tradition of the printed book, the printed word, the printed image. So that's one of the reasons I really wanted to locate Terra Firma Press, my studio space here in Limburg, in the proximity to Antwerp, the proximity to Paris. The location is outstanding, right? But it's an old medium. It has a tremendous sense of history. But when you think about that history and the legacy of that history up to today, the printed image is probably the most pervasive type of image that you're going to see, right? It's all around us. And I find that fascinating, right? And I find it fascinating that, most of the prints that we tend to look at, we see on our backdrop here, it's all commercially printed, right? Yeah. But artists get their hands on these kind of technologies, and they become transformed in a particular way as an expressive vehicle. And I think that happened historically quite shortly after Gutenberg's invention, right? As we get into the 19th century, the 18th century, artists began to use this technology not simply as a reproductive means, as it was often used
Well, it is a good means to spread out. Like before we had, obviously, the digital media we have now, it's been a quite useful tool to get out the word, even if it was just Bibles.
Yes.
Just getting people to read.
Yeah.
I feel like print is being able to print is quite a magical tool.
But in that sense, maybe also for the people who are not so familiar with the printing process, I think it will be interesting from your point of view to explain what is actually the added value of printing something in the traditional way, with the traditional method. Let's say compared to print something with a printer, with a modern digital technology that is available today.
Well, in one respect, I feel like I'm keeping the tradition of the handmade alive, which is, as an artist, critically important. As I said previously, my background is very much rooted in a traditional, creative, artistic upbringing, right? So the legacy of that medium is, I'm passionate about it. And it needs to be an important part of my visual language. And at this moment in time, it's it's paramount. And it's about, I to be honest, I do a lot of sketching, but I don't do any real finished drawings any longer.
Oh, seriously?
Right? No, not at all, because the work in print is very technologically challenging, especially in contemporary times. A lot of my background is very much rooted in research of what we often call low toxic methods. Okay, because historically the medium of print highly toxic, right?
Because of the ink?
Because of not only the ink, but also the etching, the acids that were used, the solvents that were used in laying down a resist on a plate, for instance. So it has a tradition of toxicity, but Yes, I've done a lot of research, and especially when I was teaching, it was very important to me not to expose students, as well as myself, to those kind of noxious chemicals.
Not the long-term negative effects of the art process in this particular case.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You sacrifice.
Indeed. But so, and the other thing is that print is perhaps the most democratic of art forms. It is pervasive. It's all around us, right? And the beauty about a print in our own time is that it is often a fine art print. Now, I want to specify there's a genre of the handmade, the fine art print that's handmade typically by the artist or is published by a fine art press versus the commercial, right? So you go to Action and you find a poster in one of those frames that they sell. We're not talking about those kind of prints, obviously.
Yeah.
We're talking about the artist-made, the handmade image that's finely crafted, whatever that means.
Yeah.
I mean, there's different ways to do it, right?
Yeah, of course.
You have the woodblock prints, you have the actual like full print, even to a degree, the actual comic book way of printing. Depends on how obviously how it's done, but there's a handmade process there at the start, the very base.
And also to differentiate it from the commercial one, I think it's also the intention, right? Like you do it with an artistic intention, with the intention of express something or reinterpret your own work, but it's an artistic intention compared to, let's say, the more commercial one, right? And can you maybe also explain us a little bit like what are the main techniques that you use or that there are to actually carve and make your prints?
Primarily, my work is very much about the hybrid. So I work with my hands, of course, but I also am very much open to the use of digital tools. And because the synthesis of those two working in tandem, you have an infinite array of possibilities for the creative process. And I think that's very exciting territory. You can spend your lifetime working on in tandem with these two, an old technology with the new technologies that exist. But it's interesting to take a wood block, right, which is historically the oldest of the printmaking methods, relief wood block cut. Yeah. But then you interject a medium and a process of our own time, and you get a very, very different sort of aesthetic look to that particular piece. That's really, I think, as you pointed out previously, this idea of when you were talking about the particular work we were pointing out, there's a feeling of the classical, there's a feeling of the contemporary coexisting. Yeah, I'm making work very much about my time.
Yeah.
But using these traditional methodologies, it's very important to me because I want to keep these old traditions alive and well.
Would you say that they are disappearing, or that people are losing interest actually in traditional methods?
Well, it's interesting. I think maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago, that was very much the case. There were many university programs in the U.S. folded because of the toxicity and because of the lack of interest. Because along comes digital media. Why? Why do we need an old press to make?
Sort of the discussion we have today, right? With AI, there are some people who think,
absolutely,
why do we need artists?
Yeah.
So I think it's something that happens every generation to a degree.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because I guess we will have to rediscover the value of artists at some point. We're doing it right here every episode, of course,
Yeah,
but
we try.
we try.
No, but I think it's also a little bit what happened with film photography, for example, right? There is a moment in which film photography is almost disappearing, and there's very little people that are doing it. And I do remember a time in my life in which it was becoming really, really popular. Now I don't have the feeling that it's as popular as in that particular moment.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how these things sometimes come and go, and sometimes when they come, people approach them with a different point of view, right? And it's what you were saying before, because they are they are concerned about the problems or of their time, and they use the tools that are available for them. So that's a very interesting thing.
I guess there's like a lot of similarity to the work that Scott does and your example of photographic, like film photography, in the sense that people like now the renaissance, sort of the little renaissance of film photography is very much about deliberately aging the film, or actually using like film that was, you know, expired film, not getting like fresh rolls, new rolls. So do you feel, because that's what people do sometimes, right? For film photography, there's a lot of explaining about what you did to the photograph to make it look that way. Do you feel that way when you're printing? Do you feel like there's a need to explain the process to a degree?
Yeah, I think that's quite vital, and that's part of the reason why it's important to have an open access press that I started up here in Maastricht, Terra Firma Press. I want to educate people about this particular medium. There's oftentimes, hey Scott, what do you do? I'm a printmaker. What the hell is that? Right? It doesn't quite compute, unlike painting, unlike drawing, unlike sculpture, right? And so it's my goal, it's my mission to uncover this forgotten territory.
And I think actually
way.
Today we're going to have an excellent chance to do that, because we're going to have the chance to do a little demonstration of an actual print with an actual press.
Okay, hello out there. This is Scott Ludwig of Terra Firma Press. I'm set up here in the RTV studios, and we're about to make a print. So this hopefully will be on YouTube, maybe, right? But and we're going to print this logo of Terra Firma Press, and you're going to notice that it has a layer of ink applied to this laser engraved woodcut. So we're going to make a print of this particular piece. Woodcut on Magnani Pescia paper out of Italy.
So, Scott, there is another aspect that we haven't discussed yet, but I think it's also very interesting regarding printmaking. That is the current art market and how it could be very interesting for some artists actually to start making prints rather than one-time work. What are your thoughts regarding that?
Indeed, I think the print medium is quite vital to the art market, and often prints are the gateway to collecting because of the fact that most of the time an edition is published. So let's say an edition of 20, 25 prints. So clearly, even with a blue chip, well-established artist, those prints are going to be substantially cheaper than maybe a painting or a sculpture that's created by that same artist. So printmaking, I think, plays a very important role in the market in that respect. And currently, with the advent of Art Basel and many of the bigger art fairs and such, they really play I think a pivotal role. You don't hear much about that because typically you hear about the multi-million-dollar sellers of those events, but there are many people who shop and specifically look for prints and works on paper as especially a collectible beginning of their overall oeuvre that they wish to collect.
So it's more of an access thing for you.
Oh, indeed. Again, in terms of the democracy of print and just the widespread nature of the medium, this is one of the particulars of that. They're far more accessible in terms of financially speaking for people to collect and begin work on a more substantive collection.
Yeah, and I think I can really relate to that because as an artist whose work normally takes months to do, it is exactly what you're saying, right? Like once you sell an original, then that original is gone, right? There's nothing else that you can do. That you cannot bring it to exhibitions. You cannot use it anymore. But actually, that's why I found myself very interested in all this concept of prints and printmaking, because you have the option of delivering your piece to the people, maybe in a different way, but keeping the original. And I think that concept in particular, I find it really, really interesting.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting too is, in terms of contemporary printmaking, there are many printmakers who refuse to edition their work. So especially if they're working on a larger format or something like that, and they'll intentionally either radically limit the edition to like maybe say 3 or 4 prints, or they might just make a series of quite different one-offs, monoprints we call them, that are also widely collectible because they are in essence one of a kind. Even though they're coming from the same matrix, color may shift, maybe a gradient employed. Material potentially, yes. Instead of a piece on paper, it could be a textile or something else completely.
So I guess that's sort of an element of value retention, but do you feel it inherently devalues the art if you're printing multiple editions?
I don't think it devalues it, because I ultimately I think the gallery, the market, establishes a price. I mean, you could make an edition of those 20 prints, and if you're doing it privately on your own, then those particular prints, you price them the way you see fit. But if it's created in the context of a gallery representation, then they're going to set the price, and that price will be substantially inflated because there are typically middle persons taking a cut out of that particular sale.
But I guess then that boils down to access again as well, because a gallery will only take it if they see purpose in you as an artist, and at some point you have to get your work out there.
Yeah. Indeed. And but then again, there are other spaces that are likely willing to take that work on if the degree of craft or artistic vision is up to a particular standard.
Yeah. And another thing I'm really curious about actually is you briefly mentioned before that you teach in the past, and I think it's an interesting topic because I also feel that printmaking actually has like this community oriented. It feels way less lonely that drawing, for example, or painting by yourself in your studio, right, in your crib.
It requires more people.
Yes, indeed. It feels like it's a process that it involves sometimes a little bit more of people or more like that community aspect. How is that for you?
Well, the legacy of printmaking is very much grounded in collaboration, because it wasn't a widely known, and still is not a widely known medium. So typically an artist who maybe is gaining a particular reputation, they'll be invited to go to like Crown Point Press out in San Francisco or something like that, be invited to make prints, but potentially that artist has never made a print. But they will be teamed up with a master printer or some representative of the press that will assist them in every step along the way in realizing their particular vision in a woodcut or in an etching or a lithograph or whatever makes most sense to their particular style.
Because it is true, actually, that it's maybe not a technique in which it's really simple to start. Maybe if you don't have that guidance at the beginning, or that's at least the way I feel, right? You need maybe a little bit of that at the beginning, and maybe that links a little bit well with keeping that tradition as well. So you have actually teach printmaking for a long time, or?
Yes. I taught at a number of universities in the U.S. for decades.
Do you like teaching?
Yeah, I love to teach, but I now retired from teaching so I could take on this enterprise here in Maastricht, operating and directing our own press, right. Terra Firma Press. And but the reason I wanted to do this is to have that communal aspect, and to continue to talk about and disseminate print to the masses.
Well, and you're providing the medium, like you're providing the press, and I suppose that it's not just learning how to print, but the press itself is probably quite expensive, at least the heavy duty press.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, and it's a fairly substantial machine. So in order to gain access to that machine, typically in larger cities and even out in rural areas, there might be somebody who has a studio and they've been bequeathed the press, or they bought a press because they have a passion for it, and they invite other artists and the community to come in and take a workshop or take a class, or maybe just have an open day where they can experience making a print.
And that's what you're providing now in Maastricht.
That is exactly what I'm providing now. But yes, and working on individual projects, contract printing, possibly in the future a gallery space. So indeed, the communal aspect of it is really vital, and I think Maastricht is a wonderful place to establish something like that.
There are a lot of creatives here, that's for sure.
Indeed. Yeah.
And you're right in the city center, so
Yes.
Yeah, that also really helps. And I think it's also really nice when you come new to a place that you have a little bit that opportunity to meet people in a context like that, right? Again, compared to an artist that move to a different city or a different place, but their whole practice is just like individualistic and really like something that they do by themselves, right? So this is a much nicer way to just be out and be public and meet artists.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting.
Yeah. It's I think within the first few months that I opened the studio, I rent from some ateliers, as you know, and we had the annual open house event, and it was remarkable how many people came out and visited, and many of those people came back for workshops or to rent press time, and so it's been great, and they're mainstays, I think, to the flourishing of this enterprise.
So Scott, before we say bye to you and we close this last episode of this first season of Mosart, is there anything that you would like to promote, or maybe to tell the audience about the work you do, or about the upcoming things that you're gonna be doing?
Well, at Terra Firma Press, which is located on the Batterystraat 48 in the city center of Maastricht, studios 9 and 10. We offer residency programs as well as workshops and individual projects. We rent press time. Any sort of interest in print is all that's required. So if you're interested in learning how to make a linocut or a woodcut or a monotype, any process, including intaglio etching, relief, etc., we're there, and we would welcome the public to come in and try us out.
What do the people need to do to get in touch with you, or to book maybe a time to go visit the studio?
It's very simple to contact me on Instagram at Scott Ludwig Art. I also have a website, terrafirmapress.org, and there's a lot of information there about our residency program and our services, other services that we offer. So that's there's plenty of information there that.
Do you want to mention maybe anything else about the residency program in particular?
Well, the residency program is really going strong. We've had a number of international artists, particularly from the USA, visiting us, as well as a number of artists from Europe, Eastern Europe, Spain. So it's been really, really quite nice, and I think in terms of our the community that we want to build, the residency program really plays an important role in that. And because as the residents come in, they often do, we sponsor different types of events for them, trying to get a gallery space where we can actually host residents' exhibitions, which up to this point, we've just been primarily doing in-house kind of displays of work and artist talks. But the residency program, I think, is really our capstone experience. And yeah, it's been fantastic. So if anybody's interested at all, please inquire. And there's a lot of information about that on the terraformapress.org website.
Wow, that's super cool.
So if you're a student, if you're an artist, or if you're a student artist studying in mastery,
Yeah,
definitely.
that's a thank you for reminding me, because I would love to connect up maybe next academic year and get a few interns, because there's a lot of work, and we can work out an exchange for press time and studio access and things like that. So yeah, that's one of the top items on our agenda for this coming fall and into 2027.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be people that could be very interested. Personally, I'm also going to mention that I worked in a couple of projects together with Scott, and I can only recommend working with him. It's really fun and it's really cool, and you learn a lot. I didn't know almost anything about printmaking, and I'm loving the process. So yeah, hopefully we're going to have the next set of prints ready soon.
Very soon.
Yeah. So that's also gonna be nice. Well, Scott, now I think it's time to say bye to you. Thank you very much for coming and
Thank you so much.
and having this conversation with us.
Oh, it's been great. Thank you guys for inviting me, and love your podcast.